Who am I? Sure you want to know? Well, if you've seen the movie, then you know the rest of that sentence, so I'm not going to bore you with that. So, my name is The Amazing Super Mike. I've been on YouTube for about almost a decade now in my life, and I'm mostly infamous for my famous review of Spider-Man Homecoming and a lot of the MCU Spider-Man and modern day Spider-Man in general. And you know, I think we as fans, we get so caught up in, talking about like what's better, comparing things and stuff like that. But I'm not here to do that today. I'm here to strictly talk about what Spider-Man means to me and why I love this character so much and what is it about him compared to other superheroes that makes him the most special to me. And I remember about a month ago, I remember hearing like someone talk about trying to describe Spider-Man, and I remember not being too agreeable with what they said, and I thought to myself, well, what if I just explain what I like about this character? What does this character mean to me, right? So I decided, you know what, this would be a good idea. So here we are to talk about what Spider-Man means to me. But before we start that, who is Spider-Man? No, not Ben Reilly. No, not Miles Morales. No, not even good old Miguel O'Hara. I'm of course talking about Peter Benjamin Parker, the original Spider-Man, 1962 Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man. Now, I did not grow up on the comics as far as like being first introduced to him that way. My first introduction to Spider-Man was actually through the animated series, the 90s animated series Spider-Man. So of course you can see where there would be a lot of bias. And of course with everything there's always a lot of bias, right? Usually the first introduction we have to a character or to a series, we usually look at that first introduction to that as that series or that character as like it's special to us because it's our first introduction, and honestly it still is. The 90s Spider-Man TV show, animated series, it's still in my heart to this day, of course. And then the other thing was the PS1 video game, the Spider-Man on the PS1. I grew up on this. My mother introduced me to video games, and Toy Story 2 and Spider-Man was one of those games. And I remember it being pretty difficult as a child, but watching my parents play, it was always pretty fun. And then sometimes I'd want to play and stuff like that. And of course I got to the point where I got older over time and I was able to beat it myself. But yeah, no, that was when I first really saw this character. And I really enjoyed it. I used to watch the animated series all the time. I used to have the Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. And I'd play this game every now and then. But it wasn't until 2002, and I was very young. I had to have been about maybe like 4 or 5 years old when Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man dropped. And I remember I was not exactly a happy camper in the movie theater. That's why, when you bring a young kid into a movie theater, it's probably not the best. But, I remember, really happy, really enjoying when I saw Spider-Man on the screen. And, it was so fun, of course, because then, there were so many other things. I'm not going to sit here and, gloss over my entire history, but, like this game, these were my first real introductions to this character. And yes, they were all kind of slightly different, but there was always these core things about Spider-Man that I always noticed and I always saw and always resonated with me, not only as a fan, but just as a guy, as a man, as a human being, as a person, right? And, it's been a long journey, I remember when I started getting into video games, that was all I cared about. All I cared about was superhero video games. All I cared about was I would only get Spider-Man games. I would only get like Ultimate Alliance and Batman. Wasn't until I would say 2011, 2012 was when I started like actually getting other things. Started like actually like really getting into other series and stuff like that. But my core, who I look up to and who I am, has always been this character. And, when I started reading the comics, it wasn't until I would say I was about, probably after Spider-Man 3, I would say, is when I started, like, reading these. And, I think I stopped, if I remember correctly, I ended up stopping at issue probably like I think it was about 500 or 600. It was around that time when I just kind of stopped. I dropped off. But I remember I used to get these mailed in all the time. I would actually have a subscription. I'd have them mailed to me, actually. I'd have these. You could have comics back in the day mailed to you. And you probably still can, but I mean, like, it was like a service. Like, I'd actually get like a new issue every like week or month, and it was really, really cool. No, I would say around probably after 2012 is when I started to get very, not distant, but I started noticing that Spider-Man has been changing, right? I would say after 2012, or during around that time, was when I started seeing him a bit more, just different. He wasn't like how he used to be. And then, of course, we got to 2017, and that's when they did the new Spider-Man game, and they did, like, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, stuff like that. But yeah. But what does he mean to me? What's my point? What am I trying to get at here? Well, I would say there are probably about 3 or 4 specific things about Spider-Man that I care about. And I would say define this character and represent, and how he should be, what he should be dealing with, and how he should be portrayed and stuff like that. And one of those things, one of those pillars, one of those things that I would say is very important is, and we'll start with the obvious one, which is the sense of responsibility. Like, this character, I mean, he says it all the time. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. That's his saying. That's Uncle Ben's saying, right? That's what we grew up on, or most older Spider-Man fans, at least. And that resonates with me to this day. Like, I am the oldest sibling of, of the 4 of us. And, I feel a sense of a lot of responsibility when it comes to them, and trying to look out for them and trying to be there for them, right? And I feel like lately that's just been a quality that he's been lacking, is a sense of responsibility, which is why I've been so hard on a lot of the modern Spider-Man stuff. The second one I would say is, and this one's probably a bit more personal, and this one's probably more skewed toward us, the specific gender, essentially, and that's growing up. But you can say that as a woman too. It's growing up, for a man, becoming a man, right? which is why I always thought it was really strange when they kept kind of making Peter a teenager again, because we haven't really seen Peter as an adult. I mean, recently we have with the new games, but besides that, we mostly see him now in the teenager years and stuff like that, you know. So they're trying to go a little bit more older now with him and like the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff, but that's what it was mostly about, though. It was about it you know, it showed him growing up, you know, trying to you know, deal with life by himself. You know, he never really had anybody to look up to, so yeah, you do see a lot of mentorships, a lot of different mentorships he's had over the years, but at the end of the day, you know, it's him. He's got to kind of more or less raise himself, and you know, and I resonate with that. You know, not get too personal, but my father wasn't exactly, you know, the most it didn't give me the most guidance growing up, but Spider-Man did. You know, he really kind of gave me a direction of the type of guy I wanted to be and who I kind of wanted to grow up to be, kind of. You know, and I would say the other about one or two things that he really shown me is dealing with guilt and loss, and that's probably the biggest thing that I've been dealing with probably the past couple years now. I've lost a lot of recent uncles. I'm too up on you, Spidey. I'm too up on you, Peter. You've lost one, I lost two. Loss, guilt. I mean, I remember when I, you know, I've hit like animals by accident in my car. You know, like, and it still bothers me to this day. Like, I don't like that. I don't just hurt random animals for fun or anything like that. Like that bothers me. You know, like, I don't mean to do it, right? But it still feels, you know, still a sense of responsibility where it's like, man, if I just slowed down on that curb instead of trying to be a young brat who thinks he's invincible, maybe, you know, it wouldn't have been that way. You know, and that happens, especially when we're younger. You know, we think that we're invincible, and then, you know, something happens, and it really makes us kind of rethink our sense of invincibility, if you will. Spider-Man, to me, is a character designed to help younger generations learn how to grow up and become better. He shows and teaches us how he deals with guilt and what we should and shouldn't do. But most importantly, he taught me that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Be responsible for yourself, your friends, your family, but most importantly, who you are and what you want to be and who you need to be. And that, to me, is what Spider-Man means to me. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what Spider-Man means to you. Until then, guys, I'm out of here. Up and away. See you guys.